Hi everybody, welcome to our Chapter 8 discussion where we're going to talk about budget priorities and how we fund different components by different levels. This chapter really goes over some of the ways in which the budget team can contribute to the process and help make an actual decision on the budget. Members who are on the team should be assigned responsibilities in terms of presentation and budget item descriptions, and they're the ones that are ultimately going to make the decisions. But this is going to talk about really this notion of, who's going to present, who's going to be the people that are in charge for the different items, and who's going to make those discussions and those decisions. In our initial meetings, one of the things that they say is, you focus on the objectives, the activities, and the costs, and the results of funding a particular budget. You need to schedule your meetings, schedule your locations, and your meeting expectations. Poston suggests rotating who the chair is in order to actually determine, who presents and what they're presenting on. Members should rank order all budget items. The input helps the final budget go through. You should give equal weight to members, but I would hesitate as a superintendent to give power to different people. They suggest equal weight. I don't necessarily know if it's something I would do. I think that's really up to your discretion. This is important. This is where stakeholders rank the items that are going to be budgeted for in the forthcoming year. You're going to set priorities. I want to get you practicing in this class setting priorities and thinking about that. Stakeholder input is critical. Different stakeholders have higher level of priority. The deviation from the rankings might lose autonomy and control. That you have to keep in mind that this is why you kind of have to determine who are the people that are ranking, but if you take away what the group is doing, they're not going to contribute anyway. So if you are doing this method, you have to determine who's the one that's doing it. There are 6 suggestions really for going over determining the rank order of our packages that we're using. I underlined one of them because it's the most important one. Poston listed as third, but it's number 1 because you have to make sure that anything that the state standards set a law for or an accrediting organization, an inclusion of services needed for any operations related to special ed, things like that, that got to come up before almost everything else because you need to meet the state standards that the accrediting organizations say. You have to meet the mission of the district and how it's going to improve, part of your strategic plan. You need the minimum health, safety, legal, and educational support requirements. We've talked about Maslow in here. You have to make sure you're meeting the first 2 levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You want provision of enhancements of educational and instructional support services. Ways that we've actually looked at improving quality of teaching. This is difficult to measure, but you're trying to still present it. And if it's going to be desirable for the system. Remember, you're a business too. You're recruiting parents and you're recruiting teachers to your school district. So we suggest doing a special study session to allow the board to ask questions before you open it up to the public. The community should be aware of the budget items after a strong plan is in place. My advice is always you do this first. This will help you determine the priorities and what the board thinks and what you think. So what should we be focused on? We should be focused on these 6 objectives. This is how the presentation should look and what you should be thinking about. And we're going to go over each one of these a little at a time. I have stressed this notion of strategic plan. You need to say basically how the budget is connected to the district mission or strategic plan, 1, 5, 10 years in advance. Why and how funding should go to a particular domain is important. This is arguably the most important item in the budget, but I would say connection to students receives more priority in how we're going to actually impact the budget to students. Any budget presentation, in order for you to sell it appropriately, has to be framed in a way that you say, this benefits kids because. The key is not only the short-term impact on students, but the long-term as well. If you can show investments on long-term projects, you can talk about how it can impact future students. And if there are comparables for other districts, it's a good time to mention these. This is why we're in a state that has so many school districts. knowing and having relationships with other people that are in these other districts and getting comparables is only going to help you as a superintendent, and I think that's important. Health and safety, we already spoke about Maslow. I keep mentioning Maslow, but you have to include health and safety in the budgeting ideas. Schools are required to provide health and safety to kids, so we need to make sure that that's been built in our discussion. Here we go again with that transparency word. If you ask me at the end of this class what's the word that I mentioned most, it's probably going to be transparency. Cost and total number of people impact should be stated and discussed. If programs are cut, that has to be brought to the table so that stakeholders understand how one program and losing it can impact another. That is another important big idea in this class. Every initiative will impact staff somehow. This is why you really need to show the differences in funding levels. If you can show what something looks like at 95% versus 105%, and how that impacts staff, it's going to give you more teeth and more weight when you're arguing for or against something in a budget. So humor, if you remember from taking any leadership classes at the master's or doctorate level, charismatic leaders are funny. That's important. If you can get people to buy into you for budgeting decisions, that's good. I think it comes with experience in district and in leadership. I have found that my style of humor works once people know me better. You probably have similar things in your lives, so that's important, but it's also considering your audience and considering your experience in the district. One of the other things you need to consider is don't present a budget package where you're threatening people. Don't try to appeal to emotion, because this is what the community is going to do to you as the superintendent. In my home district, back in Pennsylvania, we just experienced a massive cut of librarians. And there were 300 people that showed up at the budget meeting with t-shirts on that said, "Save the librarians." If you appeal to those emotions, you're giving into that. You have to be poker face, and you have to present things in the best interest of kids. I can't stress that enough, so don't present a budget package that specifically appeals to emotion. Think about rational decision making, and don't threaten people. That's going to cut your time in the district very quickly if you're just threatening. So anytime somebody does a dissertation with a priority queue where you're doing a rank order, you can do a Q sort. I like this approach. It's very common in ranking research. I actually am working on something on teacher hiring that uses Q sort methodology. You rank something from a value of priority from 1 to 4. A textbook says 0. I've never seen a 0 ranked Q sort, but I can see, I guess it's something that has absolutely no consideration. I don't see that working for a school budget, but each participant has a certain number of each numbers, and then the priorities are ranked, so they have to only have a certain number of 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s, and they just can't rate everything as a 4. I like this method, and the book does a good job of explaining it. I like ranking because you can change it, and you can also look at the next best options to fund. If I'm going to be pushing for a math program, I realize that English is probably going to come second to it, or vice versa, English first, math second. I don't know what your perspectives are. It depends on the person, it depends on the school district, but this gives you the chance to be flexible and show where the priorities are and as they're needed. So the next chapter goes over parliamentary procedure and commonly asked questions. Parliamentary procedure, I'm going to briefly go over it, but I'm going to focus more on commonly asked questions. If you have any questions on budget management. Thank you.